very dry here today. It's been real hot so far, and it's early in the morning. I wanted to share some of the stories about um, feeding the river or water. And some of my history with that is that, when I was young, my dad took us fishing. We fished in Oregon when he was stationed in Oregon after the Korean War. And we fished every weekend. And the thing is we were taught to respect the water. We didn't recreate in the water. We didn't go swimming. We fished, but we didn't throw things in the water. We didn't skip rocks until I didn't learn to skip rocks until I met up with boys from school in Oregon. Anyway, we fished, and through those times, we looked at the water as respectful. It's earth, wind, fire, and water. When I spoke I'm just going to deviate for a second. When I spoke in Mexico City, I was invited by the Indigenous Environmental Network to say a few words. And I just said, that when we talk about water, which is a sacred element, that, we should be respectful. So I have a glass of water here. It's in ice form, but it's going to measure how long it's going to take me to say what I have on my mind about feeding the river. Anyway, the reason I was in Mexico to begin with was I was the executive director of Native Waters, and I traveled all over and talked about water. And one of the times I was invited to go down to a tribal college near here to talk about water. And I did my whole spiel on water, and the professor got up at the end and informed the class that unlike me, we don't speak about water without the other three elements. And so, pretty well trashed my talk down there. And again, my nose is itchy. But it's dry here, and I apologize for reaching up and scratching my nose. But when I was the executive director, I traveled and talked about water in many places. I went up to Lake Balaton in Hungary, one of the most beautiful places. And I fed the river there. I fed the water there. I went to New Zealand, and I was invited to the Maori Queen's marae, and I fed the water there. They took me to her private spring, and we said prayers there. Well, when I was only a program director and I had a boss, I had told the boss that we do ceremonies like feeding the river, and it's just out of respect for the water. We don't recreate in the water. And so I told her this story about going down to different water sources and offering a respectful words to the water. And she wrote it up and was going to publish it in their teaching guide. And so I realized, how easy it is for somebody to steal things from you. And so I'm not going to tell you the things that I do. I'm going to tell you things I respect about the water. And like I said, when I was young, we fished, and I saw water as something that's respectful. And in 1981, the Bighorn case was decided, and that basically was a loss of control of water for the Crow tribe in a sense, because of Montana versus the state of Montana versus the United States. So I was down on the Bighorn, and the reason I was there is I had fished during the time that the river had been closed, and the river was beautiful. The grasses along the riverbank, the riparian areas were just gorgeous, and there was no garbage there, and so the tribe decided they were going to feed the river, and so a few weeks before the event, I went down there and I camped and I fished and I was eating, and one of my clan uncles, Hank, came by, and I asked him, the feeding of the river, and he said, yeah, they're going to feed the river. They should have been doing it all along, he said. And I shook my head, and he went on. And so I asked one of my aunts, okay, what are we going to feed the river? Hey, and I mentioned this before, is that, your grandma comes over and looks at you, and you might as well just crawl in with a bag of hammers, because she gives you a look that, she recognizes you on the face of the planet, but you're not very bright. But I watched her do that to many people, and she did it to me more than once, and so I just laughed, and it's a good memory of her, a good memory of her. But when we went down to the river, the people gathered, and this was after the loss of the river. And they had a ceremony, and it was hard to understand because there were motorboats involved, and people taking your photograph, which turned out to be the FBI. So it was a very, very confusing day, and so I later asked my grandpa, or my clan uncle, I asked him about it, and he said, a very simple man, but he was very wise at the same point, is, we as Sundance people, we go away from the water, and, we miss it. And so in those days, we say things, and so we go to the water, and that's what we acknowledge those moments to the water that we missed you so much. But they're good memories, when you're fasting or something, and you go away from the water. And so I go to the water and I acknowledge it. And when I was the executive director of Native Waters, I traveled all over and was on an airplane. And a lot of the water I tasted in places that people live. Some of it was beautiful water. It was just beautiful water. And some of it was really very hard to realize. People have to live with that. So feeding the river is a day, it's not a day, it's a way of living. And I'll say it again, earth, wind, fire, and water. You've got to live with all of these things in a proper way because we are part of it. And feeding the river it takes you to the moment of you realize something is bigger than you and you need it. And so I go to the river and I see, different things. The animals are there, and insects are there, and all of the elements, earth, wind, fire, and water, are there. And so now I've talked to you about water and feeding the river, and I suggest that you do it. It could be a ritual, it could be a ceremony. Sometimes those two things, they match up, but after a while it becomes a ceremony if it evolves. My point of reference for you to do is if you feed the river. You know, what does the river love? The river loves everything. It loves everything. There is nothing on this planet that the river, or off the planet, that the water doesn't like or love. And it will accept anything. And if it's too strange, it'll just change shape. So remember, there are kinds of ceremonies and there's kinds of rituals. Do your rituals in the light. Don't do them in the darkness. Rituals in the darkness, there's too many things that are there that are willing to accept your prayers. Do them in the light. You want to be able to see what's coming and what's going and where you are at the moment. So I'm going to lose my voice, and I guess it's because I'm talking on these talks, but enjoy your day and try to do something with water today. Enjoy. Later. Bye.